Good morning. My name is Mark Haffley, a biologist at the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission's Lake Erie Research Unit here in Fairview, Pennsylvania. Today we're going to talk a little bit about walleye and the acoustic telemetry study that we're currently doing, as well as yellow perch, smallmouth bass, brown trout, and steelhead. We have an angler award program where anglers are allowed to submit large fish that they've caught in Pennsylvania throughout the year. And from those 2020 angler awards, we see 78% of those fish that come from Pennsylvania waters of Lake Erie, with the average length of those fish being 28.84 inches and 8.64 pounds. 84% of those fish are caught during the month of July and August, which is typically when our fishery is at its best. However, it also coincides when families are taking their vacations and kids are off of school. So it just works out perfect that we see fishing 7 days a week during those months in our charter industry as well as in our recreational industry. The state record for walleye is 17 pounds 9 ounces from the Allegheny Reservoir in 1980, and the world record is 25 pounds caught out of the state of Tennessee. In 2017, we decided that we wanted to do a little study on our walleye here in Pennsylvania, and we weren't sure exactly what we wanted to do. New York and Ohio were currently looking at localized spawning stocks, and we thought that might be where we direct our attention. So the project that we got involved in is called Do Discrete Spawning Stocks Contribute Differentially to Lake Erie's Walleye Fishery? And basically what that means is, are there walleye here in Pennsylvania waters of Lake Erie spawning, and are they making a difference both locally and as a lake-wide whole to the fishery and the population of walleye? Originally, the walleye fishery in Lake Erie was believed to be Western Basin driven, meaning those fish returned to the Western Basin in the fall and winter months, spawned off of the island and reef complexes, and then migrated east every year. And that's when everyone's fisheries started to pick up, when those migrating fish made it into your waters. We've been seeing some localized fisheries that are really increasing during the month of May and June, which got us thinking that maybe there were some fish here in Pennsylvania waters that were making a difference. And we wanted to look and see if there are spawning sites throughout the lake that are adding to the lake-wide population. So our objective became to implant 20 tags a year for 3 years into fish that are caught on what is believed to be a spawning reef here in Pennsylvania waters. These tags have a 10-year battery life and are able to be turned off. So we provide a $100 reward for all of these tags, so that when an angler were to catch one, they would return it to us. We would provide them the $100 reward, and then we would get the tag back and turn it off. We can then implant it into another fish, and that fish can then be studied, its movements, while we're doing this project. So that's for the reason we have 41 fish currently tagged. We had 1 fish harvested in 2018, and we put that tag plus 20 others into fish in 2019. And then our 2020 tagging event had been postponed, and we're going to do that again this year in April of 2021 for a total of 60 plus walleye that will be tagged as a part of this study. One of the things we really wanted to look at was spawning site fidelity. Do these fish come back to the same place every year and spawn, or do they just go wherever they happen to be and spawn there? We wanted to know if these fish are actually residents. Do they stay in Pennsylvania waters? Do they live in Pennsylvania waters? Or do they migrate throughout the lake and add to everybody else's fishery? All of this will be able to be seen as they're tracked with these tags. So we've had 2 tagging events so far, both in April of 2018 and 19, and we have tagged them, pretty much concentrated all of our efforts on the Walnut Creek area. So in the picture on the left-hand corner, you can see the Walnut Creek Marina down in the left-hand corner of that picture, and then you can see the tagging site where we caught those fish on the reef in the upper right-hand corner of that same picture. Pretty much it's off the water intake pipe for the irrigation system for the golf course. It's in about 7 to 10 foot of water, roughly, and on what is viewed to be a very active spawning reef from these pictures. So Our fish have moved throughout Lake Erie, and we've got a total of 162,592 total detections from those fish as they've moved around. And then from our receiver that we placed right there where the nets were, we see quite a few detections and a very interesting piece of information. The majority of our spawning here in Pennsylvania waters happens during the month of May. You can see we didn't get the receiver out until March 21st. We only had about 10 days of detections, and we had just over 400 detections in the month of March. April jumps up to just over 3,000 detections, but then in the month of May, we see almost 11,000 detections from those tagged fish, which there was 11 of them that returned back to the same place that they were caught and tagged. So we see the majority of our spawning activity must take place during the month of May, at least in 2019, judging by the activity on that receiver. But then we see fish maintaining residency on the spawning reef all the way into June and July. Most of them were males, and more than likely they were just waiting to see if there happened to be any other females that came through. As long as the temperature isn't limiting, these fish don't mind staying in that nearshore community because there's a lot of food to eat when you get close to shore. But one of the interesting things we see is in the month of August, we had 19 detections still in that 7-foot water off of Walnut Creek. The temperatures in August ranged from 69 degrees to 77 degrees. So it was starting to get pretty warm in that near shore area, and those fish were still coming in. They were all coming in typically in the evening or overnight when the water would be a little bit cooler, but more than likely they were coming in to forage. More than likely it wasn't spawning activity during those times of the year, but it's still pretty interesting that we had fish coming in the month of August when the water was that warm and that shallow. Special thanks to Todd Hayden from the USGS for providing this animation for us. In this animation, you'll see our fish move about Lake Erie for the 2 years that we've had them tagged. The black dots you see on the lake are the sites of the receivers, and the blue dots are the fish moving around the lake. The receiver array is upkept by the USGS out of Sandusky, and they maintain the receivers. They pull them and redeploy them after they download the information from them. So you'll see the black dots come and go as they're being serviced throughout the 2-year period. Where the blue dot is currently is the base of the peninsula, just east of Walnut Creek. So we'll go ahead and watch these fish swim around. So you can see they maintain a lot of nearshore presence during the spawning period before they mix around in the east central and east basin, with a lot of the fish staying near shore. And then you can see right now they're returning all back to Walnut Creek to spawn, which is pretty interesting. They're all coming to our receiver right at the mouth of Walnut. And then again, they're dispersing up and down the shoreline, looking for other spawning reefs and other potential spawning activity. And then they mix again in the open lake fishery. But again, for the second year in a row, they're maintaining a lot of presence in the nearshore area before they return to Walnut Creek to spawn. A special thanks goes out to the Erie, Pennsylvania Charter Boat Association, the Sons of Lake Erie, and the Erie, Pennsylvania Sport Fishing Association, who were kind enough to start the donations for our grassroots campaign and get this project started. In 2018, they funded 20 tags, and then again in 2020, they sponsored another 20 tags. Also, a special thanks goes to the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission for providing matching funds for the 2019 tagging, as well as our receiver. And then also the partners that we work with on a lake-wide basis, but a huge thanks to the GLADOS program, which is the Great Lakes Acoustic Telemetry Observation System, who oversees all of this. Moving into our summer assessment of the walleye fishery in Pennsylvania waters, we do a creel survey annually that we encounter anglers at the marinas. We count the boats leaving, we count the boats returning, and then we try to interview the anglers that are on the boats that are returning to try and quantify how many fish are being caught out of Lake Erie and what kind of success rates we're seeing. In 2015, we had a huge year class born, and then in 2017, those fish started to grow into a size where they were not only being caught, but starting to be harvested. 15 inches is the minimum size limit in Pennsylvania, and those fish became 15 inches roughly the beginning to middle of August. So you see the catch rate in the purple bar and the harvest rate in the blue bar have a huge gap, and that was because those fish weren't legal to be harvested until later on in the season. So most of them were caught and released. In 2018, we see the harvest bar starting to get a little bit closer to the catch bar, but we saw a lot of anglers throwing back fish that were smaller, trying to call out and catch bigger fish. But as that year classes went through, you can see the decline because those fish are starting to be harvested by all the jurisdictions and the population declines a little bit. We've had some really big year classes born in 2019 and 2020, which we'll see those spikes in the fishery here this summer. Moving on to yellow perch, same thing with the angler awards. 28% of those from last year were from Lake Erie or Presque Isle Bay, with an average length of 14.5 inches and an average weight of 1.72 pounds. Interestingly enough, 50% of them were caught in the month of April of those angler award fish that were turned in from this area. The lake perch, a portion of them return to Presque Isle Bay annually to spawn, as well as to forage on some of the small bluegills and perch and emerald shiners that live in Presque Isle Bay. And they provide a very unique and a wonderful ice fishery throughout the winter months, as well as a shore fishery and an early spring boat fishery throughout the months of March and April, as soon as the ice melts. We see our state record fish is the perch here on the bottom left in those two pictures, the one on the measuring board and the one the gentleman's holding. She weighed 2 pounds, 14 ounces, and she was caught in Presque Isle Bay in March of 2016. The world record being 4 pounds, 3 ounces from 1865. We've seen a decline in the perch fishery starting in 2015, and then it got at its lowest in 2018, but is slowly starting to come back. Perch fishing relies on a network of anglers out there fishing together, and we're just not seeing that currently because the walleye fishing is so good. There's so many guys trolling for walleye. There's not as many people fishing for perch. So the few perch anglers that we do see, they don't have that network of anglers to work with to try and locate these active schools. Our assessment shows that there still is quite a good population of perch out there. We're catching them in our assessment nets every summer. However, it's not equating to catch rates for our anglers. They're just not finding it. But the walleye fishery is through the roof, and we're seeing our anglers switch from perch fishing to walleye fishing. We've always said that our anglers are very smart and will fish for the best thing to fish for. So when perch fishing is good, guys fish for perch and stop trolling for walleye. When walleye fishing is good, guys stop fishing for perch and start fishing for walleye. So as the walleye fishery has increased since 2017, we've seen the effort switch where the anglers are now concentrating on walleye and not so much fishing for perch. Smallmouth bass, 54% of those angler awards from 2020 came from Lake Erie, with an average length of 18.42 inches and an average weight of 4.7 pounds. 66% of those awards come in June and August. May and June is typically our smallmouth months up here, where we see the majority of our fish being caught. However, there's a spur in August when guys come out and drop shot in the deep water off of some structure, and they do really well and catch some really, really nice fish throughout the summer months. The state record smallmouth bass was 8 pounds, 8 ounces from Scotts Run Lake in 1997, and the world record being 11 pounds, 15 ounces, also from Tennessee. Our catch rates for smallmouth bass are down a little bit. Our average through the time series back to 1996 is 0.9 fish per hour. And recently, this year, we had about 0.37 fish per hour. This year was a little bit behind because guys weren't traveling as much out of state to fish. So we didn't see the effort directed towards smallmouth bass that we usually do. But we still have a world-class smallmouth fishery with lots of fish up here and lots of fish to be caught. Brown trout provide a unique opportunity for the anglers here in the Erie region, both in the open lake and in the stream fishery. In the 2020 Angler Awards of all the brown trout caught in Pennsylvania, 41% of those come from Lake Erie and the tributaries, with an average length of those fish being 26.27 inches and an average weight being 9.45 pounds. Not unbelievable, but a majority of those Angler Award fish were caught during the month of October and November when those fish return to the stream to spawn. It's when the concentration's at their highest and the anglers are able to access them more easily. We also have a very good boat fishery, but it provides more of a novelty fishery on the boat side of it. It's not common to target them in the summer. They're just a unique fish that gets caught while trolling for walleye and steelhead. The state record, however, was just caught this year out in Lake Erie, and it weighed 20 pounds 9 ounces and can be seen in that bottom left-hand picture. The world record brown trout was 42 pounds 1 ounce from New Zealand. We maintain a captive brood stock at the Linesville State Fish Hatchery to provide eggs for this Lake Erie brown trout program, where we spawn 4-year-old females to 2-year-old males. Each female gives roughly 6,200 eggs. So we take enough eggs to support the Lake Erie program, as well as support the Corey State Fish Hatchery with fish for the catchable brown trout program for the tributaries. These Rome strain brown trout come from the Rome Hatchery in New York and are classified disease-free fish. And they're also the brown trout that are stocked into Lake Ontario by New York. We continue to get eggs to go along with the eggs that we take to maintain genetic diversity, and Rome Hatchery is still happy to provide those for us. These are the stocking numbers by year for the brown trout program here in Lake Erie. Our objective every year is 100,000 fish, and as you can see, we've only reached 100,000 fish once during the time series, but we've been rather close many years. We're currently trying to figure out the best way for us to raise these fish and stock these fish. We did it in cooperation with the cooperative nursery units here, raising some of the fish and us raising some of the fish. And now we're just trying to figure out what's going to be the best route to see if we can get this fishery to its full potential by maintaining 100,000 fish annually. Steelhead are unique to the Erie region, both the lake and the tributaries, so all of the 2020 Angler Awards came from this region, with an average length of those fish at 29.04 inches and an average weight of 9.05 pounds. So one heck of a trout to be caught at 29 inches and 9 pounds. Of those fish that are caught, 70% of them come in October, November, which also isn't unbelievable because that's when we see the highest concentration of anglers on the stream. So more than likely, the best time to catch them is when the most people are fishing for them. The state record came in 2001 from Walnut Creek and weighed 20 pounds and 3 ounces. And the world record coming out of Alaska at 42 pounds even. Here we see the open lake fishery catch rates for steelhead. A lot of it has to do with weather during the fall of the year. That's when we typically encounter the anglers that are trolling the creek mouths and the nearshore area for those fish that are staging to run up the creek. So with that being said, depending on rough days and the mud line as the sand is washing around, usually affects the catch rates on the days that we're able to sample. You know, some years we don't get a lot of interviews for steelhead anglers, and some years we do. Here's the tributary catch rates. You can see August, September, October, November, catch rates are pretty stable and pretty flat. And then we see the catch rates really increase December, January, February, and even into March, which is when our effort decreases. We see a lot more fish being caught in those later winter and early spring months than we do typically when the phenomenon of steelhead fishing picks up in October and November. So with that being said, the best time to fish Lake Erie for walleye would be in the months of July and August, yellow perch in March and April, smallmouth bass in May and June, brown trout October and November, and steelhead December through March. Thank you all for your attention, and if you have any questions, please submit them to the panel as you've been instructed, and I'll be happy to answer them during the live question and answer period.